Started.
Yeah.
So.
Time to start.
That's how the meeting officially begins.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It is April 19th. For those of you with kids, 3 days left till the spring break.
Oh, wow.
Who's counting,
Is
really?
that a good thing or?
For me, it's a good thing. I'll get out of here for a week.
Oh, good.
Oh, nice.
All right. Do we have any public comment today?
I don't have anything. It's
Okay,
Reed.
thanks, Reed. Anyone else? All right, let's roll into the minutes from the last meeting. And we need to, so Ken needs to be here for the Glazer parcel update, I assume.
I think so, yeah. I talked to him the other day and he said he'd be here on Zoom.
Okay.
Oh, on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like the statement, Reed felt view sheds were still relevant. Makes it sound
Such a profile.
very prophetic.
Any comments on minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you, Laura. Anyone want to offer a second on the motion?
Sure.
Thank you, Gary. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from April 5th, please say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, there you go, Simon.
I'm gonna abstain because I was not at the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Kim. All right, so no Ken yet.
Not yet. So,
Do you want to do some other things first or get going
yeah,
on
we could-
Glazer?
we could just have a quick, just, I haven't really got much other business. We talked last time about future agenda items. So Jens said he'd be keen to come back and talk about the habitat,
Mhm.
habitat regulations. So I was going to put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Hmm.
So we can go through that. I also got an email about the from the landowner of the Schmoker Trail, who just wants to shift it slightly south into his hayfield, so he can do some forest management and invasive treatment on the trail.
So is that the part that goes, which part is that? The part?
You sort of walk across the field and then you go behind, there's like a trail that goes through.
Behind the
runs-
barn and. on
Yeah, it
the
runs
north of the
parallel
barn.
to the hayfield, so I was just gonna go and talk to him,
So
figure
he's
out.
gonna, he wants to pull it into the hayfield?
Yeah. So I'll find out what's that
I
going on
think it's
there.
pretty close to the hayfield now.
It seems like a minimal difference to me.
Yeah.
But we can talk to him on May 2nd as well, because I think he's keen to do that if he can.
Can you refresh my memory? I don't think my brain's on yet. Which one is the Schmoker Trail?
So,
Oak Hill up to,
yeah, if you park at 5 Tree Hill,
McKay's, you
parking
know,
lot,
remember the McKay's property on Sunset Hill Road? Okay. Where the parking lot is.
Simon has
connector.
maps.
It's a connector for 5 Trail over to Oak Hill, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
so you can talk to him as well. I think those are the two main items I have.
Did you get the David right?
Yep. We still have to let everyone in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can.
So we can keep our Zoom bombers.
Ken, we're ready to let you in, Ken. Where are you?
I think just Laura mentioned to me the other day, there's a beaver at work down in Mud Pond. Building a dam apparently, so.
Yeah, I
go and
didn't
have a look
see
at
it,
that.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's activity.
yeah, my husband said the water's getting higher
Right.
over there.
Yeah, I was visiting with my cousin who lives over in, come on, brain. So South View, right? The one right behind Allenbrook, that
Yeah.
neighborhood. And they have like a whole new lake behind them now.
Yeah.
for beaver activity.
Yep. Yes, there's a lot going on there.
But so far it isn't really impacting anything.
Well, not yet. I think if they keep building it up higher, we'll start to impact the
People's
new
yards.
stormwater ponds.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like
Ponds.
stormwater pond levels like here and the water has come up to like,
So that's
not
not
all
a
the
good
way,
thing.
but it's
No.
getting
May
close.
require beaver removal.
Yes, and then it is impacting, so the neighborhood has a little pedestrian bridge that connects somebody's yard or their access over to the bike path, and it is impacting that because it's starting to erode away from the one of the sides of the bridge, I guess, so they have to, whatever, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's the stormwater ponds that I was noticing are starting
Yeah,
to
that's a serious thing.
merge with the rest of the lake.
Happy beavers.
Yeah.
Simon, was there, now that we're getting close, did we land on a final number of signs to print for
Yeah, I did 72.
72?
Apparently they come in sheets.
So depending on how you slice
Yeah,
it, it's a
so
certain
you
number.
either get 72 or 96, or you can pay for 96 and get 75. So
So you got 72,
Yeah.
that's good, good choice. I like
It
it.
took a lot of thought.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
so hopefully those should be here shortly and ready to give out. You see Emily has prepared the green update, and we'll talk about green update a little bit later, but there's a little flyer there, so I think we've got all the bags ready to go.
Great.
Stacked up there. There's various activities, they're doing yoga. There's story time, and I think REI are doing something.
Oh, nice.
So 8 to 12, do come along.
Okay.
Can I see that?
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fancy paper, too.
Let me see the bag.
Was it a schedule?
That's the time to let you know if the time is wrong on here.
I think I didn't see these yesterday, so I think they have gone up. I think they
Cool.
went up as part of the hack meeting. For people to look at.
Excellent. All right, should we
Yeah.
roll into Glazer anyway? And I don't know what we can do without Ken or.
I might be able to help out too.
I guess we're not that far behind. We're still a little bit ahead, aren't we? I realize that.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. Should have put him on for 10 past.
Is that the old
So
design?
this is, yeah, because I think we haven't talked about this since just after they established the committee back in January. And since then, I think the committee's been discussing quite a lot of different things, what I understand. So this was the initial, here it comes. Good. So this was the initial, let me just stop that so we can see it all.
There we
There
go.
it is.
Hey, Ken.
Fine, Ken, you're still muted. I don't know if you're trying to speak or not, but if you are, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Okay, yeah,
It's still early here, so, it takes me a little while to get up to full speed.
Where are you, out in Hawaii?
No, I'm in Waterbury.
So much
It is on the
earlier.
other side of the mountain.
That's why I said our.
So can we just, I was just explaining that I haven't seen this since the commission. Gary's obviously been attending the meetings, but the commission hasn't seen this since January. I know Terry Moran's been going, but I don't know how much other people have been following. So I just had I think this was the sort of preliminary sketch layout that was done to facilitate the planning commission discussion, which showed the area view shed, about 11 acres given to the town, the sort of wetland area, and then the layout of the two sort of clutches of housing. I think at that time you were talking about 100, circa 100 units.
Right. So the one comment that I would make about it is that the area to the south and the west that you highlighted there, Simon,
Yeah.
it is a wetland area, but it's also proposed open space for dedication to the town. There's also that additional area you can see with the red outline between the two development areas. That's also a wetland. So just to clarify, that wetland is not part of what's being offered for dedication to the town. So anyway, just to clarify that.
Yeah. So since I last saw it, it's been through a number of iterations. I think this is the latest site plan that the specific plan committee reviewed at their last meeting. There's been quite a few changes made in response to the sort of stakeholder engagement. I think it's fair to say, Ken.
Yes. So the committee that was formed by the planning commission, there was a charge, had I forget how many points in it, that the committee was supposed to take up with the applicants to essentially to try to refine and improve the plan. So some of the changes that we made have been in response to some of those comments. In addition, we had some additional information about the wetlands that caused us to try to tweak the plan. So the plan was changed, among other things, because the committee wanted to see a greater mix of housing types. And the original plan, it was, there were some duplex units in there, but there was a lot of, single family dwellings. So in this iteration, you see there are some duplexes, triplexes. There are fewer just single family houses. And that was, the committee wanted to see just a broad mix of housing types. So we also received some commentary from the fire department about the southern development area, which would be the one to your left there, because Mountain View Road is on the right-hand side of the plan. North is pointing to the side of the page, not the top. And so, there's a provision in the bylaw that you can't have more than 40 dwelling units from a single point of access to a public road. And our original application was for what you see in that path. We had asked for whether that could be maybe beefed up such that it could be considered an emergency point of access. And the fire department said, we really don't like that. The bylaw says you got to have at least 2 points of access. You're going to have more than 40 dwelling units. So in that southerly development area, you see you've got that quasi horseshoe type configuration, which gives us 2 points of access from Old Stage Road. The typical minimum distance between two roads like that, according to our engineer, is generally accepted as 250 feet. And that's, I think Brian said that's about 310 feet. So we think we can meet that standard. So you essentially have two development areas, one which would be accessed off of Mountain View Road. The road there is proposed at the far westerly side of the property, which would try to keep it out of the view shed. You can see there's a little parking area there. That was something that we were asked to include potentially for, people, however the town wants to use that piece of land. And, my view is on it that we don't want to be overly specific in proposing something because the town should be free and most likely would have its own process with lots of voices that want to chime in as to how ultimately would want to be used. But so there's we're showing potentially a little parking area there, and that could potentially be moved or reduced or whatever it is the town wants to do. There's a path going through there. We're required under the bylaw to build that path parallel to Mountain View Road, regardless of the specific plan process. That's a requirement. There's a official map criteria to build out this multi-use path along Mountain View Road. So we would be required to build that, the precise alignment, whatever the town wants. I'm sure Bruce is going to want to chime in on that. Bruce Hoare from Public Works. The land does drop off. Anybody that's driven by this parcel from Mountain View Road, that, Mountain View Road's the high point. And if you're looking south, it drops off. I recall back in the fall when I had to go stake out the property, I was looking for a place potentially to park alongside Mountain View Road. And it's like, yeah, there was no way. Yeah. So I ended up parking. I found someplace else to park. There was an access point off of Old Stage Road, but so it does drop off. And so that will affect, where that path might go. So in our original proposal, that open space area along Mountain View Road, would protect the view shed, which is identified as wanting to be protected in the town plan. So it's an important component of this proposal. Was originally around 10 or 11 acres. And what you see there, it's just over 15 acres. And that doesn't include the wetlands. So we've increased in this proposal, the open space that would be offered for dedication to the town at no cost to the town is increased by roughly 50%. In addition, when you couple the open space area with that dark green area, which is class 2 wetland and its buffers, you can see you get a lot of protection for that view shed, because the view shed, it really goes diagonally across that corner, the corner of yeah, very good. And it's in that diagonal, that's what's going to give you the view of Camel's Hump. So you combine the wetland with the 15 plus or minus acres of the open space, and you get a lot of protection for that view shed. Now there's the open space area to the south, which is around 40 or so acres. That's the part of the property that's used by Windswept Farm. So we're offering that to the town, again, at no cost to the town, for the town to potentially own it, and the town could lease it to Windswept Farm or somebody else. But we know from the public commentary prior to our submitting our formal application that there's a lot of interest in seeing Windswept Farm protected. And most of what happens at Windswept Farm doesn't actually happen on the land that they own. It happens on this particular parcel of land that's owned by the Glazers. The Glazers essentially have leased it to Windswept Farm for $1 a year over the last 20 or so years. So in a nutshell, that's it. There's a little community building in there down off of the Horseshoe road with a little parking area. There's some neighborhood gardens that are proposed in there. So anyway, so those are the highlights, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hey Ken, how big are the topo lines that you're showing from, I'm just thinking about the view and those houses along the road off of Mountain View, and it's hard to tell without knowing what distance those topo lines are. The increments of 10 feet.
I think those are 10-foot contour lines. I'm looking at a hard copy of a previous iteration. It's not indicating what the increment on the topo lines are. What I would say is that if you don't know already, the center line for these roads has been staked out. So, we are doing the site visit tomorrow, but you're certainly welcome to drive by, in terms of, we'll give you an idea visually of what that would be like in terms of what the distance would be from, say, Mountain View Road.
Are the duplexes 2-story or 1-story?
I believe they're going to be 2-story. Probably you'd be looking, you'd see a maximum height somewhere around 28 to 30 feet.
Yeah.
Most structures that get built, new dwellings in Williston, a tall structure would be 32 feet, but typically you see around 28, sometimes 30 feet is sort of typical.
So those houses closest to Mountain View Road would actually come pretty close to being.
I would guess so, David, based on my experience driving by there regularly.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, Ken. Gary, do you feel like the committee that you're participating in is satisfied with the proposal as it is?
Yeah, I think generally pretty satisfied, and we've gone through kind of what score they would get with growth management. That's correct, Ken, isn't that what we call that? In each individual piece of that, we've talked about and scored and discussed alternatives and such, and I believe they're up to what, 52 points, Ken?
Somewhere around there, plus or minus.
Yeah, which is really pretty high. I mean, there's one other project that exists that's higher than that?
Catamount.
Catamount.
Mhm.
And
Also
so,
one that I'm associated with.
yeah. So anyways, I think we're pretty satisfied. We'll learn a lot from a site visit. I'm pretty pleased personally with the viewscape protection, because I think once you get rid of the houses between the wetland and Mountain View, that gives a whole much bigger chunk of view to look over top of the wetlands and stuff.
Yeah, and that foreground that we were talking about, that there's like in the view shed, there's like the foreground, the different layers, and that foreground, even if it was going to be low, was going to be man-made landscape,
Right.
In the original proposal. So that is a good direction.
I really like the parking area in the north. When you drive through Richmond, you notice they have little parking areas everywhere so people can stop and like unload their bikes or whatever and take off. It's nice. There's a parking area there, not just for a view to sit there, but you could take that bike path and then connect to the other bike paths behind the school or whatever. I think that's really nice. And the community building, is that for just the development, Ken?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we decided to name those neighborhood buildings, didn't we, Ken?
Yeah, one of the members of the committee, I mean,
Suggest-
typically, in most plans, it would be labeled as a community building or community gardens, but one of the committee members, wanted to make it clear on the plan that it was just for the neighborhood itself, which was always the intent. So, we'll name it whatever folks want us to name it. We're pretty clear on what it is.
Mhm. And what is the right of way in the northwest to that other piece of property?
What do you mean by what is the right of way?
There's a, oh,
It's not gonna be able to see that one.
that's right there.
I think we're talking about, I can't annotate, hold on.
So, the road would come off of Mountain View Road. It would be a private road because it doesn't serve anything more than the development. So that's what Public Works is going to want. It's private. That doesn't mean it's exclusive. It means that it's going to be privately maintained. There's a stub street to the property line, which is a typical town requirement. And what that do is it creates the potential for somebody else to tie into that road at a future point if that's desired. There's all kinds of examples of how that gets done in the town all over the place. And that's all that is. And that was something that we were asked to include. So we've included that.
Okay, thanks.
Because that property that it is adjacent to is also going through transition, right? Isn't that the one that,
Yeah, but I've heard something about that.
I think that homeowner was selling their property. I don't know if it's sold.
yeah,
And this eventually, this is a relatively small parcel, but it does lead through to the larger Martel parcel.
Hmm.
And it gives that interconnectivity that the town plan
yeah.
always seeks.
Right,
Another
so
thing-
that existing house, remember, it's in the same zoning district. It's in the residential district. The residential district allows up to 3 dwelling units per acre. So I think that parcel is like 1.4 acres or something like that. And so there may be future development potential on that property. And, so one of the things that it could potentially do is provide an opportunity for, if there are additional dwellings that get built there, they can access that road rather than having a new curb cut onto Mountain View Road. So, ideally you like to try to limit the number of curb cuts you have on a public road. So.
Another thing we can't see from this map, Ken, is any kind of connectivity to the west in terms of primitive paths or anything. I don't know if we have anything that we could bring up to show that. We've had a discussion about it. We didn't make any conclusions. but-
Right, so that's to be determined to some extent, because what we don't know is, and I think part of this is what we're going to learn tomorrow in the site visit, is what might be feasible based on what the land is like. So what I didn't say in my presentation about the wetland delineation is that whole sort of southwesterly wetland area. There may be some upland portions in there. We don't believe that all of it is actually a wetland and its buffers. We've sort of mapped it off and we're just calling it all wet for the purposes of a density calculation, which we think is a conservative estimate. And so we're not trying to take credit for something that we don't think is there or may not be there. But it may present some potential for some sort of a pedestrian path in there, which we know the town would like.
Yeah.
There is some sort of at least an easement to a pedestrian path with the Northridge development, which does abut the subject property over there and near that corner area where Simon is highlighting right there.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that may be the kind of thing where for the town as an applicant, it may be easier for the town to get a permit to do that through that wetland area than it would be for a private developer. The other thing is that because it is wet, at least some portions of it are wet, there would most likely be limitations on what could actually be permitted through there. Like, for example, it may have to be on some sort of a boardwalk punch-in type of thing. You may not be able to actually just have a path on the ground you know, whatever. Those are the kind of the typical things that you see in areas like that. So,
Yeah, so if we have time on the evening site visit tomorrow, I think we were going to maybe have a poke around in here and see what the lie of the land is in this sort of wetland forest area.
Be real nice to make that connection to the west if we
Uh,
can.
It would be, obviously, as Ken highlighted, there are permitting challenges.
Yeah.
There's also, I guess that's another liability for the town that we need to think about. Boardwalk through a wet area.
There's a lot of it already. Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing, Gary.
The question I have is whether that would, what access points to either the development at North Ridge where they built the multi-use trail, or to the north of that, like where would it connect?
Yes, that's what we don't know yet is,
Yeah,
it really depends on the terrain, I think, David, where it's feasible to build something. But there's more connection points now than there used to be, potential connection points because Northridge, that multi-use rec path that goes through Southridge does touch the Northridge property, basically where you see the yellow dotted line across the southern portion, you know, that it enters and goes up to the access road for Northridge. So there's some different things in there that could potentially be connected to.
yeah.
So is this existing easements right here, this blue, you know, Simon?
So I think that is, I think that's
Yeah.
theoretically an open space, and then this area here is actually town owned. It's a strip of land
Yeah.
between Northridge and the
Martel.
Martel property that I think was envisaged would be a connection. So I think that goes all the way to about here. So that is a potential point.
Mm.
And I think the Northridge guys gave us I think a primitive trail easement to go through this area, which is very wet, around the back of these people's houses. So that theoretically could be a connection. And then like for the Larson property up here, Northridge also has a right of way stubbed in to get onto the Martel property there, which would be a road obviously with sidewalks. So there are quite a few options. But I guess we don't know what the best option is. We don't really know we've never been out to look what's in here.
So it could, I mean, you could envision it could go up along here and join in there, or
Everyone can
maybe
see.
this
Yeah.
type of thing. But I guess it just depends on how the feasibility of putting it on the ground.
Are there plans for the Martel property that I am not aware of?
No, but it is in the residential zoning district.
Yeah.
So it is likely that it will be developed at some point.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume that the Martels at some point will want to see some sort of development potential for their property. When that might be is an open question, but based on all the conversations that I've listened to where they've been part of, it's pretty clear to me that they think of their land in terms of dollars and its development potential. That's a big part of it. So, you know, when that might be, hard to know, but as Simon pointed out, it is in the residential zoning district, which also means it's in the town's sewer service area. And so, you know, you put those two things together, and that results in significant, you know, potential development. A lot of it's probably going to be wet, most likely, because all the land off of Mountain View Road, anybody that's driven down Mountain View Road, you know, the land just kind of slopes southward from there. And, you know, water always finds the low point. So if they were to do a wetland delineation, I would be very surprised if they also didn't see, you know, significant class 2 wetlands that were identified.
All right, thank you, Ken.
All right, you're welcome.
Thanks, Gary.
So
Anything
if
else?
any of you do, just quickly for the site visit, I didn't hear from any of you that you were interested in coming. If you do come, just so you know, the Mausers have volunteered to do some sort of a hay wagon ride. There's a lot of people between the committee members, the staff, and townsfolk who have expressed an interest in attending. Not everybody's going to fit on that wagon. So everybody's welcome, but understand that most likely some folks are going to have to walk. You know, but
What time
Just
is
so you
the
know.
site visit?
what's that?
4:30? The site visit is at 4:30?
4:30, it's going to meet at the Windswept Farm location. If you are going to come, I would suggest try to be there ahead of 4:30 so we can get folks organized. You know, we normally start at 5 o'clock. We moved it up to try to make sure that we had enough daylight. I think we'll be good in that regard, but you know, time is going to be of the essence, and so if you are going to come, if you come a little bit early, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ken.
All right,
Looks like you got a
welcome.
good day for it. See ya.
See you, Ken.
Bye.
All right. Well, good to see that. Looks like there's been a lot of progress on that since the first proposal, so.
Yeah, there was one thing that, I guess now that Ken's forgotten, but I was kind of bummed that Terry, I think, mentioned it, and I mentioned a couple of times about one of the contributions to town, I feel, would be for that to be a non-fossil fuel heating, cooling entity, you know, because that gives to all of them.
The neighborhood.
Yeah, just the whole development, the, you know, heat pump systems or whatever, ground source
Carbon
heat
neutral.
pump, carbon neutral. Because that would help not only the town, the world, if everybody starts thinking that way.
How did that, and that conversation didn't go anywhere?
Not really. I mean, I think what they said, oh, well, we'll make the building solar ready. And I said, what is that? I said, you put a little conduit through the.
That's gonna be
the-
code anyways. By the
Yeah.
time these houses get built, that solar ready is gonna be code.
Well,
I
don't
think
know if
that's an
it's code,
interesting
but
idea to have
It's
it
kind of
be-
meaningless because it puts the whole expense on the buyer of the house. You gotta arrange to get solar put on, whereas I think at least invest in better insulation, things like that, that'll last the lifetime of the house. And so, I don't know, I didn't get too far with most of them. They keep saying it's gonna be so much more expensive, but there's actually a fair bit of data that shows it's 2 to 5% more expensive, but the payback is like 5 years, and then from then on, it's like, you know, really minimal environmental impact.
And so related to that, you brought up heat pumps, which could be, and like that could be the heating source of choice with or without solar, and then be connected to solar panels later. Was there a conversation around that?
Yeah, they basically, they didn't say a word about that particular piece. I mean, you can do community ground source heat pumps, which are even far better than than
Yeah,
electric, because they don't have any limits to
And you
when
can't
they
really
can
put them
work.
in after the fact, because
Yeah,
it
you'd have
takes up
to,
so much space and impacts everybody's yards.
but you could, there's numerous examples of a community-wide ground source heat pump system.
so is it worth our group making a recommendation that we would like to see an energy efficient or carbon neutral? Like, should we make a comment about that?
I
I
don't
think
know.
we should probably, I'm just conscious that Ken left and now we're talking about making
Yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah.
We'd have to discuss that in another
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
And yeah, I was
We can
thinking
make
that's-
recommendations without Ken. Yeah, I mean, do we have to have?
Well, I mean,
It was,
I think it's
it was kind of the message was, all right, we're moving on to the next agenda item though.
Okay, well, I just wanted to throw that out there.
But I guess the question I have is just in process question is when, so this was just an update for us. We're not voting on anything, but when do we actually formally touch this? Like, when do we?
so the substantial benefit was the open space. And that's like something that's, because it's recognized in the town plan, is like a given as a potential, and the specific plan committee is supposed to work up the site plan to make sure that that's something that, in a form that the town wants to take on. So it will go back to the planning commission in early June, I think, at which point they'll decide whether they need a formal recommendation from the Conservation Commission. Because this isn't like a piece of land that, like Pine Ridge, where it was just not on the radar. This is something that's been in the town plan for a long time. It's something that we want to look at. So that I'm sure the planning commission will discuss that when they receive your report.
Okay. All right, so we will have opportunities to provide formal feedback down the road.
If the
If they
planning
ask for it.
commission asks for it, yeah.
Yeah. But we can always attend the meeting, the planning
Yeah, I
commission
think
meeting
our,
where they're gonna
our
discuss it.
representation now is me.
Yeah.
Terry
Yeah.
goes to them as well. And I brought it up several times.
Okay. And then we'll have touch points again as whenever the project is actually up for.
Yeah, so it'll need to, I mean, it's got to go through a huge number of hoops, this. So it's got to go to the planning commission, they've got to make a recommendation to amend the bylaws, and then it's got to go through the select board. And we've got to update the bylaws, and then it has to get its discretionary permit from the DRB. So there are quite a lot, there's quite a bit further to go on that. And that's where we start to, throughout that process, we start to work out the details, like about what the deeds and the plats say about, you know, what that open space is and things like that.
All right,
Then we
so
would review the discretionary permit and make recommendations, but at that point, the plan is, the specific plan piece is done and accepted.
right, but the specific plan doesn't necessarily get into the details about energy efficiency and all that, right? Does that come in?
No,
That's not part of the benefit
Right, that
to
would,
the town.
that would come in later.
If they wanted to pursue those points through the growth management plan, they would have to indicate in their application that they're going to be pursuing those types of either all electric or energy efficient
I see.
standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could, we have some time, we could at a future meeting, have another conversation about energy efficiency. And if we
So
want
there
to
is a-
submit a memo to whoever, planning commission or somebody,
yeah,
share our position on that.
yeah,
And there is isn't there an efficiency committee in town now, or how?
yeah.
how's that?
Energy committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know how they're, you know, whether they're not represented on this group that I'm aware of. But it seems like, you know, they should be aware of what's going on in these things and maybe the opportunities too. It's not that they're not gonna be efficient, because they will meet code, which is pretty efficient nowadays. The way the scoring system goes is to get any score for efficiency, you have to go way above to this new system. The state has new kind of guidelines that made it so, you know, it's kind of impossible to get points for that. So I was kind of saying, you know, we gotta have some system that gives value to efficiency, that without going to that extreme that nobody can reach. I don't think there's not a single dwelling in the state of Vermont that's reached. I think there's, in Williston, there might be one planned rural big house that's hopes to meet it. But that's about all that at least was discussed in those committees.
As the Efficiency Vermont employee, I would dispute that characteristic. It is achievable, and
Yeah.
you know, it's actually pretty unique that Williston has that development review board process, you know, the growth management, and scores those points on all of those different criterias. And the category of efficiency that is identified in that is achievable. It is costly, but that is, you know, that is what that is what the Efficiency Vermont incentives are actually available for. So that if housing were to pursue that level of efficiency, they're not doing it on their own. Like they do get support and they get technical support. So it's not unattainable. I know developers will say that it's unattainable,
Right.
especially since most developers don't really even achieve the energy code, candidly, because there's no enforcement in the state for enforcing energy code. All they really enforce is the fire code. And so that's actually been a problem historically. So if we wanted this development to actually reach the energy code as the minimum, that would take an effort by the town to actually ensure, like the town would have to do that. The town would
Right, so
have to say.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. We should have a meeting. I'll talk to Melinda about it. You know, there's a whole raft of issues about the town enforcing its own energy code. We're not set up to do it. It's only incentivized, it's not in our bylaw. I can talk to Melinda about what her thoughts are with the energy committee on it. So sorry to cut you off, but
No,
So,
there's a
I was-
conversation now with the right people.
yeah,
That's what I'm actually gonna ask you, Simon, is would it be possible to set up I don't know, what a full joint meeting with the energy
Yeah.
group on this, but.
I can ask Melinda. Yeah.
Okay.
I think another group that should be there is Efficiency Vermont, somebody. Because we're getting, in the committee I'm in, we're getting just the viewpoint of the builder, and like you said, they say, oh, it'd be way too expensive. But there is data that to suggest it is more expensive, but it pays to do it in the long run by far. So I think it'd be cool to have somebody from Efficiency Vermont come in and say, here's how it could work, here's how we would support it, and make it possible.
I could see if we do that. I don't know if we would get involved in local planning
Okay.
efforts, you know.
Well, you can at least explain what's required to meet
Yeah.
those codes, yeah.
And obviously you have me who can
Yeah,
identify that.
All right. Okay, so, well, maybe we can see where that conversation goes and then look to another agenda, or future agenda to talk about a recommendation from this group if we feel like we need it. Okay, other business, did we cover other business?
I was just going to talk about, so for the green update, we're getting the No Mo May signs at some point. We will have them prior to the day. We have some graphics on various conservation initiatives in Williston. So what we talked about last time, the work that the students did, explaining things. We've got a Catamount Community Forest document to use. I think we can print out the primitive trail map that Gary recommended and also bring some trail maps along with it. I was going to speak to Reed about doing an ERF, a new 11 by 17 ERF.
An ERF and U, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
to have something to talk about. So this,
so what would that have, like a list of what we've spent money on in the past,
Yeah,
or what would that be about?
It would
I think
be a conversation piece.
yeah, a conversation, some of the highlights, you know, this is what the ERF is.
Yeah,
You know, did you know it partially funded the purchase of Mud Pond? Did you know it helped purchase, I think it purchased the conservation easement on the Cycle Farm.
did the McKay farm,
Yeah.
it's done a lot.
Yeah, so highlighting,
Yeah.
just kind of highlighting some things enough to start a conversation with people when they come up to the booth.
Yeah, and you know, did you know we have to vote on this? Well, we don't have to vote on it every year.
It has to be approved.
It has to be approved by the select board.
Yeah.
It currently stands at just shy of $500,000. And so on.
Okay.
So we can work on something like that. So I can be there to set up for 8 AM. I know, Laura, you've got something on now, so you can't attend, unfortunately. Reed, I guess you were coming along, were you?
Yeah, let me check the schedule here.
I have it held in my calendar, so I can be there for any part of it.
Okay. So I don't know if we just want to, if people feel that they can commit to a particular hour or something, so we don't have everyone turning up at the same time. That might be good.
Yes, I do plan on participating. So maybe we just need to hash out, you said 8 o'clock is set up.
So we should be set up by 8 AM. I can do that. It's not going to be a particularly big setup for our table, I don't think.
Okay.
And then it's just, there's like probably 8 to 11 are probably the key hours. I think the town band starts playing at 11, so maybe there won't be much scope for conversations during that.
We'll mostly be entertained.
Yeah, just if we can just find out, just a couple of people want to come along and talk to the conservation.
At a minimum, maybe we could split it, Eric, to, if we overlap, that's fine, but, earlier is better for me, like 8 to 9:30 would be easier for me.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do, you want 9:30 to 11?
See if we could pencil that in, and then if I can stay longer or whatever, then at least we have somebody.
Yep.
I think it's commencement. I'm like looking right now.
Really?
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm trying to find out right now, like what, no, I might be wrong. Hang on.
Simon, can I pick up my No May sign at that event, or can I pick it up earlier?
At that event would be preferable.
If there's one left, I'll grab it from you.
I think that there should be plenty left.
70 from the sounds of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm totally wrong. It's not commencement. So I'll check. I'll make sure I don't have anything on that day. I might be able to, if I don't have a child activity, participate.
Okay, so we know it.
Yep.
You'll attend. I don't know if anyone thinks of anything else we should promote. Just talking point wise,
We won't have any concrete information on the ERF event thing you're working on, right?
I don't think by that point we'll have anything concrete, but maybe one of the things, if we do have like a 11 by 17, one of the things we can say on it is, look out for some outreach around the ERF process and success stories this fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sounds good. All right. Any other business?
That's all I had. We talked about a couple of future items earlier, so we'll do those. That's all I had.
Okay. Library Community Center Scoping Study Interview. Do we have somebody joining us?
Yeah,
for that?
so someone was going to come along and join us for those. So they've been visiting the various boards to solicit feedback on what people would like to see in an expanded library or a potential future community centre. So I think they've been to Planning Commission. They went to the DRB last week, and they were just coming here. This isn't specifically a conservation thing. This is just in general as residents of the town. So at the moment, it's purely about the types of uses that you want to see in that space. If there's anything, use a lot of the library, anything you'd like to see more there, what you think for a community centre. And I think they're going to use that to develop a sort of space plan and figure out what size facility they need, whether it's 2 facilities or 1, and take that forward in the identification of sites. So, yeah.
We're right on time for that.
Yeah. Mike, hi. Oh, hi, Mary Claire, can you hear us? Yeah, okay. You're still muted.
And now I didn't at the beginning, sorry.
So we were just meeting. I was just explaining that you've emailed to the boards to solicit feedback on the community and centre library project. And now it's the turn of the Conservation Commission. So we've got 6 members here, 2 on Zoom and 4 in person. I don't know if you just want to introduce yourself and a little bit about the project before we launch into getting the feedback.
Okay, great. So I'm Mary Claire. I live here in Williston, and there's a bunch of us who are volunteers on a steering committee for the library expansion and community spaces project. And at this phase of the project, we are soliciting ideas through and opinions through surveys about what people would want to see for Williston town to provide for indoor community spaces. The library, what sort of sparked the project is the library is at a point where it really needs to expand in order to meet its current needs of programming and collections. And the rec department also has no space in town that it currently manages. It does have a new rec zone that we're renting in town that opened a few months ago. So the goal of this is to meet as many different Williston residents as possible to get ideas, and then the next phase will be taking that input and putting it into a more data-driven survey that's a little bit more click, 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 that we'll try to get out to, again, as many residents as we can, and then take all that data and bring it to, and then consult with our architecture firm and take that to the select board. So that's sort of the scope of our project. And like Simon said, we're trying to get to as many people as possible. So we're going to boards, we're going to senior centers, we're going to schools, we're going all over. Any questions before we start with just the interview questions?
Meg, do you have a spot? This is Dave Westman. Do you have a spot on the map that you have identified, or a handful of spots that you're thinking about?
No, we don't. So this, and it is a little bit not intuitive, but the goal of this is to get the what, so then we can figure out the where. So if people want something that is enormous, then we need to be looking at certain sites. If people just want to put a little like annex onto the library, then that's what we'll do. So we are gathering data at this point separately on, is the library site viable for expansion? It's a different question whether people would want to expand there, right? So there's sort of a lot of questions about that, but we're putting that on hold while we figure out what people want, because that's going to drive the where. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Great. And it's MC, Mary Claire.
Mary Claire, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're good. Go ahead, Mary Claire.
Okay, great. So just real quick, part of the survey is figuring out what places and spaces people currently do visit regularly with your families. That can include indoor or outdoor. And like which programs and activities do you participate in through the town?
Is this multiple choice, or are we just offering up places?
Does anyone use the library much? If so, what do you do there?
All the time.
All the time.
I can go first, Mary Claire. So I'm Reed Carr. Nice to meet you. I don't know if I've met you before. So I have a 5-year-old, and we use the library for him to get books on a weekly basis. Well, I wish we went on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, whenever our books are due. And when we go in, we sometimes get sucked into other activities. Like if the Legos are out, we'll do some Lego building. So creative building activities are definitely attractive right now. I've been eyeing the fact that there's instrument rental or borrowing, because That'd be a good way to try out some instruments without having to locate one outside. And then as a member of Sustainable Williston, we often reserve space at the library to meet. One of the types of events that we want to be able to do more of is like screening of films and that type of thing. And there just aren't a lot of great spaces to screen films. Like this space we're in right here would be great for 10 people. But what if you have 15 or 22? So sometimes we think about the police station meeting room, which isn't always available now, and fire station is kind of out of the way, and it just nothing is really set up. The kivas at the middle school are probably best set up for something like that, but that's school space, and you get into like people coming in and using space that have educational things, you know, perhaps sitting out and stuff. So there just isn't a great space to do like film screenings and that sort of video form events.
Thanks. You actually bring up a good point that I'm not sure if everyone's aware of. It's just that some of these spaces are becoming less available, like the police station, right? That has other, now we can't be going in and out of that space. And then also school spaces, they've identified that, yes, there are community things that can happen there, but in general, it's important for the public to not be at school. And one question for you is just what would a space look like that would be conducive for film screenings? Like what would it need to have?
Well, in the post-COVID world, a lot of people would prefer that there be a lot of airspace, so it doesn't feel too claustrophobic. Having different elevations for people to be able to see a screen or a speaker, if it's a little bit of a larger setting. So a Kiva type setup like the school has allows people to be relatively close to each other front to back, but still everybody can see. And like people who need to stand have options in the back, people who need to sit have options in the front, just that kind of variety of seating. People sometimes have a hard time hearing too. So having, you know, good quality audio doesn't have to be expensive, just loud enough and clear enough that everybody can hear well. And parking, the ability for enough people to gather to watch something like that.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. My kids are 12 and 9, and we use the library about the same frequency every week, every other week, mostly for checking out books. Games are a big opportunity. We love the visual puzzle. That's fun. Yeah, I mean, definitely the library's pretty. I would like to see an expanded adult section for my own personal use, because I would like to rent out more books. I love the books on tape, and books on CD are super convenient. Certainly when I was driving more pre-COVID. One thing that I think, you know, our kids would really like to do is bring the dog to more places. And there is no place right now for a Williston dog park. But that would be really fun, is if the kids wanted to go to the library and mom and dad could bring the dog to the dog park, or vice versa. Something like that would be super great. And I think about that South Burlington rec area across from, I forgot what street that is. Not important. Heinsberg Road, I guess, or whatever it is. And that's a really nice community space. It's got the ice rinks, it's got dog park, it's even got like a little nature trail that you can walk on. It's got little league fields. That is such an asset for that community. And I would love to see something like that, where multiple forms of community involvement and participation can sort of take place in one location. And I do think that the backside of CVU has some potential for that. It's already got the ball fields, it's got the playground that the kids use, it's got the skate park, which is super fun, and basketball courts. But yeah, that would be my thought.
So are you looking, like, are you interested in some sort of indoor community rec center like Cairns or for Williston?
I've heard about some of those ideas, and I think that they're interesting. And I've heard about, for example, the town of Woodstock, if I'm not mistaken, just developed like a community gym, and that's like indoor recreation and exercise that town residents will have access to at a very low cost, and it would include the types of rooms that you could either have a movie screening in, or you could have a yoga class in.
Mhm.
Maybe not the same room, but
Maybe not at the same time.
maybe not at the same time.
Jumping off of that, the town of Colchester also just voted to use their public option tax to develop an indoor rec center that sounds very similar to what you just described. And I do think it would be interesting to explore that for Williston. I also have 2 kids and we use the library regularly. And then if I think about like the other recreation spaces, definitely that whole area behind Central School, we go to like pretty regularly. We love the library. I'm not sure that we have like reached the point where we're feeling like we've outgrown it yet, because this is how big one of my children is. So we're still like appropriately sized for our family. The other place that I like that we use for recreation a lot is Catamount, and while it's not like under the rec department's purview, it is town owned, and I could imagine that somehow being incorporated, or like the offerings, like the summer camps, and they're starting to do some after school stuff, be like incorporated in, and actually like a space where there could be more after school programming, especially like recreation based after school programming. I think for young families would be huge. Like the currently after school options, like they fill up super fast and there's a huge wait list. Like this year we signed up on time, thought we only needed certain days, realized like a week later we actually need this extra day, immediately got on the wait list, and like we're still on the wait list. It's April. So I think thinking about after school and like recreation based after school could be really helpful for the community.
I'll second that. As another parent of 2 kids, one is 13 and one is just about 9. My 13-year-old, and pretty much ever since he was 10 or 11, would go. He would go to the fields after school, and just hang out there with his friends, which it was great. But making sure that those opportunities are continued forward and maybe expanded on would be really nice. He does used to go to the library pretty regularly, and we use it we're in there a couple of times a month as well. I guess from my perspective, agreeing with everything that's been said so far, I think that's important wherever the library is located. I think it's important to make sure that that's very walkable, so that much of the community that it's serving can walk to it. Obviously, Williston is a weird town in that we have fairly urbanish suburban center and then rural as well. But I think it's just for the sense of place of the community, to have a library or a highly walkable area is important.
And in a town like ours with rural areas and lots of different neighborhoods, I know that a lot of people are loving the bookmobile program.
Yes.
So that's a way to like extend the reach, since the library can't be in every space at once.
Yeah, bookmobile is great.
Yeah, my kids, just like these guys, would be in the library every week getting out books. I'm Laura Meyer. Now they're 30 and 28 and they're gone. But I help run a Vermont Master Naturalist program, and I've had a couple talks and actually films screened at the library, and you know, the space was barely adequate, so I think somewhere where you can actually have speakers without setting up chairs out the door would be great. And
I almost
also,
forgot to mention that we did the summer movie series, and that was
Oh, yeah.
so much fun, and I would love to see that summer movie series continue.
Was that outdoor? I don't.
Yeah, it
think
was
that
outdoors by the gazebo.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Mhm.
Certainly it's not library oriented, but the town band concerts are pretty well attended and lots of different generations. Some people walk or bike, some people drive to it, but I think there's value, like people sometimes would go in and use the bathroom inside of the library and then come back out. So having
Mhm.
outdoor performance space or activity space that also can benefit from the facilities is something I don't want to lose
Mhm.
in this process.
So I'm Gary Hawley. I'm older than Laura, so my kids are even older than her kids. By a little bit. And we used to use the library a lot. We're not using it as much now, but we're about to retire. So I anticipate using the community space a lot more as we have more time. I think now the use we get out of town is more using primitive paths. And when our kids do visit, we spend a lot of time walking around Five Tree Hill and Sucker Brook and Mud Pond and such, which I think, you know, having the whatever community facilities near, like you guys pointed out, near the center of town and walkable space would be a huge benefit, I think.
To Kim's point about after school programs, if there can be safe ways for kids to get from school to a rec center or expanded library footprint would be good.
Yeah, I think actually this is like a really critical point of there are after school programs, but like I would have to come home from work to transport my child to them, which defeats the point.
It's kind of hard from Pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there could be like a school bus that takes kids to Catamount
Right.
or takes kids to a community center after school for a program.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that like there's a bunch of different groups thinking about how to expand after school, and it would be super cool if this could like feed into that in some way. Like I know Catamount is thinking about it. I know Audubon is thinking about it. That relationship doesn't really work because it's not in Williston, but like, I don't know. I've said my part after school.
Well, I think the larger point is that area somewhere between Central Valley School, Allen Brook, you know, that section of town is like where kids should be even after school. You know, even just busing them into like the downtown development zone, which is where the current rec center is, you know, that's being rented, you know, that just seems like a logistical nightmare, honestly. And, you know, it's kind of one of the reasons why our kids don't do the ski program at Cochran's is because we've just heard nightmares about the transportation aspect of it.
It is insane. It
It
is
is.
100% insane.
Yeah.
It's a great program. We love it. It's insane.
Mhm.
Just have to acknowledge that's gonna be a little nutty.
Yeah, I pick up my kids after they didn't make the bus. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of kids and after school, I don't know how snack works, but it would be nice to have, I know my kids after school are always really hungry. And if there's something that could be, you know, kind of healthy, but, you know, almost something like when you walk into Echo, they have like a little case of things you can grab, like yogurts and stuff. That could be key.
Yeah, help bridge the phases of the day by having food, some
Right.
sort of healthy food available.
Yeah.
That makes me think that also a community center like could double as support for a business like somewhere like Wilson Coffee Shop or something like that, that is like, you know, maybe not in a great location and but offers like a really nice experience for the community. Like I don't know, I've long felt like our downtown or our village could really be enhanced by like gathering spaces.
Yeah.
And I always think like, well, people gather when there's food, right? And so I don't know how that like fits in and it's like getting away from like the idea of like library and recreation and but it's an
Nothing-
interesting
that
thing to
idea,
think
too.
about.
Nothing's
think it's
off the
off.
table. Nothing is off the table.
Yeah.
So
I think, I
that's,
agree.
yeah,
I think public-private partnerships are a great option to explore for augmenting that experience like that.
Yeah, and it could be unstaffed some of the time, it could just be, self-service, self-checkout kind of experience most of the time. And during the rush hours, they have like a staff person there or something, so I think there's opportunities there.
I'm sorry, I have to drop off a little early today, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, David.
I'm gonna also have to go in a minute to do the Audubon
Okay.
shuffle.
I don't know.
I just want to throw out there too, I know we started more like on the library focus, which is great. And yeah, nothing is off the table. So if you all have ideas too about the other end of the spectrum, if you know any seniors who live in Williston or what they might be interested in, if you have ideas now, great. And also I can send a link to the website that we have to set up an interview or to get connected to, if you have other folks who might want to participate.
Well, there's always the question about the community pool. Many people want a town pool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be here, right? So what would you guys like to see in terms of what would be in that rec center, right? What would it look like?
I don't know if
Yeah.
this is something I would like to see, but I'll just say that like we do the summer swim league in Essex with our kids and we drive to Sand Hill, which is like, it's not that far. I'm not like, oh my God, Williston needs a pool and summer swim team, but we do take advantage of the pool and the summer swim team in the neighboring town for whatever that's worth.
Something that doesn't take a lot of space and is pretty safe for many ages is bouldering. So I think bouldering would be an activity that I would love to have a place that I could like walk with my son to, and hey, let's climb for half an hour and then walk home. It doesn't require a lot of equipment and supervision and stuff, so that's one. There's some other things activities like, I think table tennis is another activity that I think lots of ages can do together. It doesn't take a lot of space, can be folded up so that the space can can double as like a yoga studio or different things. Table tennis would be another potential activity. I know I don't want to keep a table at my house. Like in the old days, we would just like sacrifice a garage bay and have a table out there, but then you have like two people using it 1% of the time. And
Yeah.
instead of everybody using one together, so.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to see the library part of it get sacrificed for the rec part of it either. I love using the library, but I probably 5% of the time a book is available for me to check out that I would like to read.
They need to expand their collection, is what you're saying, or like the collection could expand given the
Definitely.
demand.
And I know that a lot of their collections of books, when they put the newest book that comes out in, they take the oldest one out and get rid of it because they just don't have room.
Yeah, I think half their collection is in the basement.
Yeah.
That's what you're told. There's
Yeah.
also not room for wheelchairs to turn or use the aisles currently. So there's a lot of access issues right now that
Mhm.
I didn't even think about that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just add to Laura's, like, I'm gonna sign off, but I'll just say that I also have a similar experience where I often go to the Wilson Library first for like personal reading. And then often I'm like, well, I guess I'll get the book from work because I work at a university. And
Mhm.
I didn't really think about that until you said it, Laura, because I ultimately am getting the book, so I don't like feel the, I don't know, I don't feel the impact, I think, but you're right. Like a lot of times I go there and then I go to work and get it.
Mm.
All right, I'm gonna sign off. See you all
All
later.
right. See you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Another thing, I don't know if you have more questions for us, but another thing that been on my mind recently, because I've been doing rehab for a shoulder and I have aging parents who have various needs, would be a rehab space. So not like weightlifting, not treadmills, but I'm talking about like all the different rehab equipment, like different resistance bands and stuff. So that while people are visiting, either they're going to the library or they're going for recreational activities, they can do their rehab exercises while they're there, without having to purchase all that stuff to have at home.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And it could have like posters up of, if you're having trouble with your shoulder, here's some 1, 2, 3 exercises if you're having trouble, whatever.
I'm a PT, so I
There you
love
go.
that.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, self-help rehab.
And let's get a
space.
shuttle, right? So people can get there.
Right, yeah.
Anything else for, any other questions you have for us?
That was the majority. We are asking, I know some people have dropped off, just demographic questions to make sure we're getting as many people from Williston as we can. So the demographic question that we're asking is, what street do you live on?
I'm on Sunset Hill Road.
Partridge Hill off Oak Hill.
La Valley Lane off of Mountain View.
Penny Lane off of Route 2.
And Kim, who just dropped off, is on LaFave Lane.
Mhm.
And I
Where's
think,
David?
I think David said he's in
Brennan
Brennan
Woods.
Woods.
He's in
Yeah.
Brennan Woods somewhere.
Mhm.
And then
Terry's
off of South Road.
Christmas Lane. is
Christmas,
there.
Christmas Lane is. the
She
other-
wasn't
She wasn't here today, but
Okay. Thank you. That's great. And if you think of more ideas or let us know, I will, I'll send the link to Simon to send out to you in the.
great. Thanks for coming to us.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you all.
Yep.
Thanks
Have a
for
good
your
day.
thoughts. You too.
All right, and that gets us to visual impact assessment. Yes.
So, we talked about this last time about whether we want to do this. Obviously, the statement was made that they are still relevant. But we were going to have a look and start thinking about how much things have changed. So I've started having a look at things. I went out and last week attempted to take some photos of a few views. So maybe we could have a look at those and think what people think. And, you know, I can show you them and we can talk about what were people thinking when they decided on this view.
So these are some places where those arrows were on the map.
Yeah,
we
so
looked at.
let me just
Yep.
remind you.
Those little red arrows pointing in different directions
Yeah.
from the roads.
So we have this map that has the viewpoints on them. So I've started numbering them using GIS so that we can start attributing different views. And then we also have the focal points, which are the ones in blue, the red circles, and then the various view sheds. So the sort of the dark orange, I think, is the primary foreground. And then we go middle ground, which is the yellow, and then the background.
So red.
And then all the hashed ones are basically the same, but they're secondary, presumably less important. So
I love your dry humor.
Too many things going on there. Okay.
There we go.
Just figure out
Oh,
if I can-
Love that
It did-
view every time we try.
Love that.
What's wrong with that?
It needs a little more graffiti. It's the-
Okay, well, I guess we can just look at it like this.
It did, when you went into presentation, it took a minute, but then it
Oh,
did. go-
right, okay,
Yeah, it did go eventually into presentation. Give it a second, there you go.
okay. So I had a bit of difficulty figuring out exactly where this view was.
Oh,
I think this is where it is, and I think rather than looking over the sort of open space towards Southbridge, I think it's supposed to be looking down the Cirque driveway. So my guess is, like in 1989, when this view was selected, probably this tree line wasn't so prominent,
Right.
so you probably had quite a nice view behind it.
Okay. Used to be a gas station.
Is that what it was? Okay, maybe you didn't then.
It was a repair, or at least a repair.
Dave's Automotive.
Dave's.
Oh, it's Dave's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good memories.
Yeah, so that's like what you can see at the moment from the best place. So there's those two sets of concrete barriers. I don't really think this is particularly great, would be my view. But if you move down, you have a width development option. So those are 2 points from roughly where the pink is. And that's the conserved land in front of Southridge and the Allen Brook, which is a bit more visible. And something I encountered is that the photos don't really do this justice. I think it does look better than it does in the photos.
I agree. When I drive by there and I look off to the north,
Yeah,
I definitely feel like, I'm like, oh, that's really nice that the houses like aren't right up against all this natural area in here. And
yeah,
But obviously in the summer, that's gonna look a lot different.
right.
With leaves on it, you won't be able to see anything back there.
So that is another thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, for 6-7 months of the year, you do
Yeah.
have a view.
Except it's gonna continue to go up
Right.
like this, so that's gonna lessen over time, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. And it does, like, that highlights to me how some of these views are essentially at the mercy of the landowner
Mhm.
and what they do with their boundary treatment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I mean,
That's
that's,
true, too.
yeah, that's like one to think about. Do we think this is a view that's, it's already conserved? So we're not gonna get sort of identifying this view regulation wise, doesn't really get us anything more than we already have.
But is that our goal, or is it to identify good views regardless of whether it's conserved or anything?
I think that's the discussion. That's what we talked about last time, like why are we doing this?
Right. I agree,
Um,
yeah.
well, and it could, yeah,
yeah,
labeling those or
yeah,
documenting that they exist might be of certain amount of
Yeah.
value, and if there's opportunity to conserve them in the future, maybe
Yeah.
they're more important, maybe that's
Mhm.
a different categorization.
Nice job piecing those three pictures.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a nice view.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
That probably looks as good as it did
Yeah.
back in 1989. That's a great view off South Burlington. You can see the Lacaz barn.
Mhm.
Bit of a shame those arborvitae are there, but again, that gives you like this shows you like the foreground, the man-made focal point, and then the background, and even all that development in South Burlington that has probably developed since the viewpoint is selected. I don't think
Yeah.
really detracts from it.
I would think so, yeah.
It's a nice one.
Yeah, so that's definitely one that I think is definitely still relevant.
Mhm.
So this one is just down the road. This one was a bit of a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Probably when the trees weren't there, you could see the hillside in the
You
background.
can see that big massive house that's up on.
That's right.
Walker Hill Road.
So this was done in 1989, and I looked at, there's a property here it was built, the building permit for it was issued in 1989. And then there's that big house there, which was part of the CAS, which I think had a CO in 2005. And I just wonder whether this was like selected in response to, because the CAS subdivision took like 12 years or something to get going before anyone actually started building somewhere. I just wondered whether this was selected in response to what was happening there at that time. This doesn't really seem, I don't know what we're protecting here other than.
What are the pink dotted lines around that?
That's just to show you which view it is.
Oh, okay, yeah, you put that in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it sort of looks into that primary primary foreground. So that was quite interesting to me. Just it highlighted the lack of like why is this a view? Like why did they select this? Like you know, if someone came in and wanted to subdivide that property, for example, and we said, you know, we'd go, okay, it's a view shed, you shouldn't be developing that.
Yeah.
And then you know,
They'd be like, what?
yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a tricky thing, like you pointed out. I think some of it is people just saying, oh, I know this nice view that's here, and they put something in. But obviously it changes over time too. And then if we start taking these out, I'm sure there's other places where the view's been enhanced to some extent. So we gotta try to find those to add to it if we take some of these out. I mean, it's not linked to taking them out, but we gotta be on both ends of the stick. It's investigating what's there as well as trying to be aware of new views or things that weren't noticed in the past.
Yeah.
And so I guess, you know, I'm seeing this two different ends of the spectrum. There's the exercise that you are doing or started to do or whatever with, you know, all right, we could go through the whole town and look at each of these red arrows and see what the view looks like this one. Okay, well, maybe that's a misfire. And then there's every time there's a new subdivision or development proposal or whatever comes on the table, we go look and see, okay, how are these views? What is the view from this property, or what are the views from this property, and how are they going to be impacted or maybe enhanced?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we could start doing now as part of our review.
Yeah,
you know, going out and having a look
at the time.
Yeah, like what does
You
this,
should.
you know, does this actually matter anymore? Because that's certainly not something I've thought about really in writing those reports. So I took a couple of easy ones because they were next to each other.
Oh, that's that.
All right, looks great.
Yeah, it's not, as far as box scores goes, it's a good one. You can see O'Reilly's are painted there.
I definitely like the darker color. It blends better with around the red and tan.
O'Reilly's is gonna stand out, but
Yeah, and I think like this.
Is that what the orange is there?
Yeah, over here you can see it.
Yeah, wow.
And this sort of, because that, I can see why they selected this, because you can sort of just see it over here. That's probably a pretty nice view, or they built this stuff. And you can see, like you say, how much better REI sort of just blends in there. It's, you know, and obviously it's a shame it breaks the horizon.
So maybe a little bit off topic, but would the form-based code address that, like the colors of the building and stuff?
Yeah, so the views aren't, like, we'd probably get rid of all these ones in the growth center anyway, because the views.
Well, the priority
already
is
don't
not
matter,
views.
in it. And it does address materials and things like that, height of buildings. Yeah, so and then there's the last one, which was right next door, so I did it for fun.
Yeah, that's great. So when did all this stuff go in relative to 89? Was it in before that?
So I think Maple Tree Place,
I wanna say
the
early
90s. the COs for this started coming through in like, I think the early 2000s, late 90s.
Because so maybe when these views were selected, there was nothing but
Nothing there.
That was
fields.
a nice view, I remember.
Yeah,
There was a
too.
horse farm.
There was
across
fields,
the road.
beautiful fields.
Yeah.
Taft Farm.
Well, the Burt Oak Knoll was behind this
Mm.
on the right-hand side.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
if this weren't here, you would be seeing the knoll about where the tree
Mhm.
is right in the foreground here.
Right.
So
So
those-
probably a lot of those arrows and viewscapes in that area can disappear.
Well, we can probably take every arrow out of the growth center.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably an easy.
Since it doesn't matter, right?
Well, and the
Well,
view's gonna be different from different heights
Yeah.
too, if they start.
I guess it does depend on what we think the purpose of doing this is.
Mm,
Is it to have a regulation that says this is what you have to do in a view shed, or is it to say this is a view that the community values as part of it, which is only really of value for identifying stuff that's important. There might still be some of those in the growth centre.
Yeah,
I see.
I was gonna say, I don't know that I would wholesale remove all of the viewpoints in the growth center, because there are some, like.
Yeah.
Out
Occasionally
front
you get a
shots,
nice,
yeah.
nice
Yeah,
view,
that's true.
for the moment, until
Mhm.
whatever that next phase of Penny Crossing is
Yeah.
built up. You get-
Yeah,
you
as you
can
drive
save
down the
some
road,
potential.
yeah, it'd be nice to.
Yeah.
Keep those. The ones on Oak Hill Road are still amazing of Mount Mansfield, because the road
Yes.
slopes away.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
houses are down, and then you get Mount Mansfield and the cycle farm, and it's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
and that's
and
kind
Campbell
of,
Sump too.
And
right?
Campbell
Yeah.
Sump further down, yeah.
And I also had my bike in, so I went down the rec path. So you've got some pretty nice views there. You can just about pick out the church steeple. On the right there, this was better the day before, but I had the wrong lens for the camera. Like if the visibility is good, you get an amazing view of Mount Mansfield from the.
So are they probably aren't identified as good
No.
views now, yeah,
Because they're not on a road.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
and
Those are
then.
examples of what we need to identify, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this is, I think, if it wasn't so wet, you could walk further back and get a better view of the town hall. And Old Good
Yeah.
Church in the background. And that's a new piece of public land. This may be important. And then like the Southridge view, on my way into work, this is like the last hill to get up before you get to work. And so this is quite, even though the Commons is there, I quite like looking at this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
when I go
that
in.
field is really
Yeah.
pretty. And then you have the horizon
Yeah,
with the hills in the background. The one in the upper left, that's my neck of the woods. And actually, if you go from here, if you go straight back to the back of the field,
yeah,
and then you look toward Mount Mansfield, very beautiful views from the back of the field, but it does slightly slope up, so you get a little bit of elevation and you can see above.
Mm.
So are those the same views you get from the interstate?
Well, the tree line blocks you a bit from
Yeah.
the interstate, and so if you're headed south and you look, so if you're headed this way and you look to the left as you pass by us here, you
Yeah.
get the view, but it's broken by the trees. If you're in the field, you're on this side of the trees and you just have the field in the foreground, so you don't have anything really blocking you. But if we were to ever build more stuff or taller stuff where our house is, it would disturb the foreground of that view.
I just looked at those 5 and took a couple of extra pictures of those. I also,
I'm supposed to take pictures of the ones off of Mountain View, and I've been looking at those. I've been driving, but not taking the photos yet. But they haven't changed as much, I don't think, as some of the ones you just showed.
Yeah.
I think they're more similar to the one looking toward South Burlington
yeah,
from Texas Hill.
no, I found finding somewhere to park to take these rural views can be a bit of a challenge.
Seeing that parking
Yeah.
area idea for the Glazer parcel, I mean, that's, were you talking about the
Mhm.
Richmond, back there, in
Yeah.
Richmond, you can, yeah, that would be another reason to do this, is to say, you know, where should the town work?
Oh, that's
Maybe
true
with
too.
private landowners to say, hey, let's put in, 6 or 8 small pull-offs where people can enjoy these views.
Mhm. Or just park and get their bike off their
Or
car
just
and
park and
go.
get their bike out their car if they want to,
Mhm.
bike in that area of town, I don't know.
Mhm.
cool, well, that's good. Sorry.
Yeah, so I also talked to Pam at CCRPC, who's their GIS person. So obviously we can absolutely use GIS to refine if we get some views, we can use that to refine the view sheds and map them on the ground. She's explained to me that they have things like building footprint data or land use data that we can use to like widen or narrow the views using GIS into like what we consider to be important. We can also do what Gary was suggesting, where, say, for example, we pick something like Mount Mansfield, it'll be, you know, a line at a certain elevation that, you know, you need to see in order to get the view of Mount Mansfield, and then map that back to everywhere in town that can see that view, and then maybe overlay that with some of our public parks or trails, and maybe pick out some views that we might not necessarily pick up. That way, that could be an interesting exercise to do.
Yeah. Can you do that, or is that something that we'd have to
so
have somebody do for us?
I think I know enough about GIS to understand what can be done and to say this is what I would like to do.
Do they provide that service? or do you
I think
ask?
they can, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I
I
think
was also
actually,
thinking it might be a good project for a student who wants to work on more advanced GIS
Yeah.
stuff, but they would need a mentor, they would need somebody to help them.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know that we'd want to put that on Pam. I would prefer to do it herself.
yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out.
Have a sophomore student.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, Pam was quite interested in this because I don't think when we were talking about I think it's called observer points, which is where you come back, you pick a place and you
Yeah.
go, who can see it. She was like, oh, I've never done that. That'd be really interesting to be part of. So I think she'd be quite
So
interesting.
learning experience for her too,
Yeah.
potentially good.
You know, there's various other things that we can use GIS for.
So maybe a next step is to set aside a little more time in a meeting and just discuss, you know, like, why do we want to do this? What's the importance of it and the goals of doing it to
Yeah.
help with development review and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
you said, and then it sounds like then we could make a plan which has different pieces to it. One
Yeah.
being maybe visiting most of those arrowed places and either include them or ditch them but then we got to figure out a way of identifying new places that may not have been identified or
Yeah.
recently changed or something.
Yeah, and it might be helpful. I think someone mentioned last time we could have a look at what Jericho or Essex did with their.
Yeah, I talked to a friend in Essex and he sent me their whole packet of their scenic viewscape. I'll forward it to you guys.
Yeah, I think that's like I've seen that, it's like 100-page document.
Yeah, it's huge. Maybe you've already seen
Lots of
it, so
pictures, though.
we don't need it. Well, it's just their attempt at identifying the value of viewscape.
Yeah, it might be good
Just a
pre-reading.
glance at
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, so we could have a look at that, and we can also have a look at how they interpreted that into their regulations. See if it's better or worse than ours. We can have a look at the town plan chapter and see what we think could be useful for updates that.
Sounds good. All right, so our next meeting is what, May?
May
2,
3rd.
3rd?
Yeah.
All right. Calendar. Yeah, I'm good that day. Okay. All right, awesome.
Hey, great.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary, for representing on the laser stuff.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's important work.
I'm gonna take one of these for the road. Where
Yeah,
this
take-
stuff?
I think it's generally in
Costco.
good shape and we will, I know that viewscape is really
We
well
have some
protected.
chocolate holics in our photos. Sorry, was that Gary?
I'm just saying